Time to pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the R Lounge. Well, you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. And sometimes you really wish you could. Today in the R Lounge, OP's out here just trying to build a name for himself, not his family. Mom threatened to disown me if I didn't make brother a partner in my business. I stopped paying her mortgage and car loan. Have you ever heard what they say? Don't mix business and family? Well, I don't know who they are, but they must have been burned a few times too many, just like me, because they're dang right. I, 43 male, built a business for myself from the ground up. It wasn't easy because I came from a tough background. My mom, 58 female, had me when she was just a teenager, and my dad split when he heard I was on the way. Her parents were ashamed to have a pregnant teenage daughter and turned her out, so she had to fend for herself. So for the first 17 years of my own life, we were dirt poor. No, we weren't just poor. We were in poverty. Everything changed when I started working. It wasn't immediate. At first, I took any job I could, just to get food on our bellies, or keep a roof over our heads. Back then, I could work as many as 3 or 4 jobs at a time. I still had the endless energy of youth, and the fear of going hungry was a great motivator. It was at one of these jobs that I met Arnold, a man who inspired me with his business acumen. I looked up to him because he had come from the dirt like me, and now he was more successful than I could ever imagine. And he took a liking to me because I was a clever kid with a lot of ambition. So he became my mentor. He watched my progress closely and gave me advice and opportunities to observe how he did business. When I was about 20 years old, I felt I'd learned enough, and I presented him with a business idea that I had. Arnold believed in me and my idea, and he invested in my business. With his advice and backing, I was slowly able to grow that one business into the chain of businesses I own today. Arnold isn't around anymore, but I thank him every day for the way he changed my life. That brings us to my brother, Nick, 40 male. He's my half-brother with yet another unknown father, but I always just call him my brother. Nick is not the ambitious type. He seemed to accept our lot in life and spent his teenage and young adult years getting into trouble with his peers. Back when I was starting to work with Arnold, I tried to introduce them. I hoped he would be able to learn from him and make positive changes in his life like I had. Nick didn't take it seriously, which disappointed me. He said Arnold was full of himself, and Arnold hadn't been too impressed with Nick either. That didn't stop me from trying to get my brother to take his future more seriously. I tried to get my brother in on my business while it was still growing. Arnold had disapproved and threatened to pull his investment, but I insisted. He was my brother, and I wanted both of us to rise out of our poor background together. He understood and relented, though he still thought it was a bad idea. Nick put in the work for exactly 1 day and then disappeared when he found out he wouldn't be earning a paycheck. I told him that he would be earning from our profits, but he said he preferred the certainty of a paycheck. He went back to his job at a local factory after that, and no amount of pleading would persuade him. Why am I digging up all these stories from almost 30 years ago? Because it's all the background for what happened a few days ago. My mom asked me to come over and told me that Nicky, as she calls him, wasn't doing good. He was struggling financially, and he'd had to move in with her recently. I wasn't surprised. Nick was usually going through tough times, and he'd always bounce back to Mom during those times. I was expecting her to ask me for some money to help, as usual, but what she said next shocked me. She told me about Nick's difficulty holding down a stable job, which I already knew all too well. Then she asked me to make him a partner in my business. I didn't believe I heard her right at first. She said that the jobs I'd given him in the past were too low for him, and that's why he'd never stuck around. According to her, it was embarrassing for the founder's brother to work as a lowly manager. God knows I've tried countless times to help Nick. I've offered him jobs at my companies and even offered to train him for a managerial position, with the promise that he could move higher as he gained experience. Each time he would show up for a couple of days and disappear without a word. Eventually, I simply stopped trying. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. I explained that I couldn't just give Nick a high position like that. He lacked work ethic and wasn't qualified. I was prepared to start him off low and promote him as he gained experience and proved himself. But making him a partner was out of the question. I'd spent more than 20 years building this company up from nothing. There was no way I was just going to hand over part ownership to my business to him. "But he's your brother," my mom said, as if that meant he was entitled to decades of my hard work. I agreed that he was my brother, and I cared about him too, which is why I'd tried to get him in on the business when I was just starting. It was why I'd given him so many chances, which he'd thrown away each time. I was done giving him chances. I asked how much he needed from me, and my mom snapped. "We don't want your handouts." She then said that ever since I became successful, I'd been using my money as a tool to control both of them. She said I just gave them enough money to get by, so that they'd be forced to come crawling back to me when they needed more. She accused me of not wanting my brother to be a partner to keep him from being financially independent. I couldn't believe my ears. Did she think I liked having to provide for both of them? Nick was a grown man who couldn't hold down a job and drank and gambled away whatever money he had. My mom was an older woman who honestly wasn't much older than me, but I still made sure she was comfortable. I paid the mortgage for the home where she lived, where Nick lived more often than not. I also handled her car note and sent her some money monthly for essentials and utilities. That usually came out to thousands of dollars a month, just to keep her happy. I wasn't trying to control anyone. I was trying to help them. I told her that I had been more than generous. I wasn't trying to control anyone. I'd given Nick more than enough chances, and he threw them in my face each time. I pointed out that I wasn't running a hot dog stand. I ran a business that has locations across the country. Making Nick a partner wouldn't help him or my company. With his lack of knowledge and experience, he would run my business into the ground, ruining things for me and several employees who relied on me. It would be the worst business decision I could ever make. My mom gave me a glare I hadn't seen since I was a child. She said family was what mattered most, but I cared more about employees who had nothing to do with me. I told her she was twisting my words, but she ignored me and said we all struggled together, and that my success should be their success. Her words were starting to reek of entitlement, and it was annoying me. I explained that we had struggled together as a family, but I was the only one that had struggled to build this business. I agreed the family was important, but my business was my own. They had no say in any decisions regarding it. I also added that she needed to stop enabling Nick so he could learn to stand on his own 2 feet. My mom wasn't hearing me out, though. She screamed at me and said that I didn't want to see my family succeed and that they didn't need me. Then she gave me an ultimatum. Either I make my brother a partner in my company or she would disown me. I honestly wanted to laugh because I thought it was a bad joke, but she was dead serious. I asked if she would actually disown me because I didn't hand my brother something he didn't deserve. She said she would, and that I didn't deserve to be part of this family if I didn't commit to our collective success. Now I let my frustrations show. I told my mom that she didn't care about Nick's success. She just felt entitled to everything I had built. I said that if she thought that disowning me was the best course of action, then I wouldn't argue with her. She shouted that she never wanted to see me again, and I stormed out of her house. It's been a few days now, and I can't get that fight out of my head. I keep replaying the conversation, trying to make sense of it. The entitlement and ingratitude just set me off. Did I really not do enough for my brother? I worked my butt off to get where I was, to pull our entire family out of the mud, and instead of being proud of me, they're trying to leech off my success. It's too much for me to think about right now, so that's why I decided to write everything out. I hoped putting the whole mess into words would give me some perspective, but I'm still just as confused and hurt as before. Look, you can't force someone to be a partner in a company just because they share your DNA. If Nick thinks working for a paycheck is beneath him, then he can keep chasing the thrill of living the dream. Ultimately, you have to do what's best for your business and your own peace of mind. If that means setting boundaries, so be it. It's okay to prioritize your hard work and achievements over family pressure, especially when that pressure feels unfair. Update. I didn't jump to any rash decisions about how I would move forward with the situation with my mom and my brother. It's always been a principle of mine, both in business and in my personal life, not to make important decisions when I'm emotional. It's always worked out for me so far, and I was sure it wouldn't fail me here. I think a week passed before I realized that I couldn't emotionally detach myself from the decision completely. It had to do with my family, and you can never completely separate emotions from family. So I did something I rarely do. I asked for advice from a trusted friend. He was a fellow business owner, and he'd also gone through some complicated family stuff a few years back. I figured that he would be able to give me an unbiased opinion. We met up to have some drinks one evening, and I told him everything. He knew about my family background and Nick's struggles, so I just told him about the conversation with my mom and the ultimatum she had given me. He said pretty much the same thing as the comments in my original post. My mom was pushing way past her boundaries, and Nick was looking to me as a safety net. He said he knew it would be painful, but I should enforce boundaries. If that meant I should refuse to give in to my mom's ultimatum, then so be it. That was tough to hear. I did love my mother and my brother, but he was right. I wasn't going to be used. If my mom wanted to disown me because I wouldn't bend over to unreasonable demands, then I was no longer her son. My mom called me a few days after that and asked me if I'd come to a decision. I simply replied that she had made the decision herself, and I was going to respect it. She started to shout at me again and call me names. I got ingrate and worthless before I hung up and blocked her number. I was going to cut ties with my family, but not before showing them what it really meant to kick me out of the family. I made some calls to stop the automatic payments on my mom's mortgage and car note. I didn't bother to notify her. She'd find out soon enough when they started blowing up her phone and mail with late notices. It took about a month before my mom found out what was up. I had already blocked her number, so she couldn't call me. Instead, I got home one day to find her sitting on my front doorstep. I braced myself for another barrage of shouting and insults as I approached, but it didn't come. She simply said, "Hi," like the last fight hadn't happened, and then she asked me how I had been. I just crossed my arms and looked at her and said, "What are you doing here?" She frowned and asked me what I meant by that. I told her that I wasn't expecting to see her anywhere around my house since she didn't want anything to do with me anymore. She surprised me by laughing and putting her hand on my shoulder. "That didn't mean anything. You know people say things they don't mean when they're emotional." I said I didn't know that. I was raised to say what I mean at all times, even when I'm angry. She didn't like me using her own words against her. She told me to stop being petty and said that I needed to be mature. I could see another fight was brewing, and I didn't want to deal with that at the end of a hard day. So I walked past her and unlocked my door. She tried to follow me in, but I just shut the door in front of her and locked it behind me. She tried the door, and when she noticed it was locked, she started shaking the door violently. I shouted at her not to break the door, but she didn't listen. She just kept shouting at me to open the door immediately. I sat on the floor in the hallway, listening to my mother have a minor breakdown. It wasn't pleasant to her, but part of me was glad to think that she might be learning her lesson. I'm not just a meal ticket that can be treated however you like. I think she realized that I was not going to respond to threats and shouting because she eventually stopped shaking the door and lowered her voice. She finally came out with it and asked what was going to happen to her mortgage and car note. I considered not answering and pretending that I had gone deeper inside the house, but I decided against it. She was already here, so there was no point shelving this conversation for another day. I told her that her son was paying for those, and I was no longer her son. She had another one who could pick up from where I'd left off. She was silent for so long that I thought she'd left. When I looked through the peephole, she was still there, though. Eventually, she said that Nick wasn't capable of paying for either of them. I told her that it wasn't my problem. I got a headache around this time, so I just went up to my room to take an aspirin and hoped she would be gone by the time I was back. Fortunately, she was nowhere to be found when I returned later. I had some peace for a few days after that. I thought my mom had finally gotten the hint until she showed up with my brother. This time they caught up with me in the parking lot of my office building. Nick looked about the same as last time I saw him. He was poorly groomed and looked like he needed a few good meals. Life hadn't been good to him. I felt bad for him for a moment, but I remembered how many times I'd tried to help him get his life on track, through jobs and cash, and how he'd squandered them each time. I couldn't think of a meaningful way to help him. I could give him $1 million today and it would be gone in 2 months. How do you help someone like that? Nick got in my face immediately and accused me of abandoning our mom. It was a few minutes after noon and I could smell the alcohol in his breath already. I told him she had disowned me and I said he should get out of my way. He grabbed my shirt and tried to shake me, but he didn't have much luck. We're about the same height, but I take good care of my body. I hit the gym at least 3 times a week and play squash on weekends. He, on the other hand, is thin and was already a few drinks deep. He couldn't move me, and I don't know why he thought sucker punching me would be a good idea. As is the goal with a sucker punch, he caught me by surprise. I stumbled back a bit while he laughed. I hit him back and put him on his butt. My mom screamed and put herself between us, but I noticed she was holding her arms out to protect Nick. Maybe because she knew he was the one in more danger if we got in a fight, or because she had picked his side. I just wiped the blood from my lip and tried to straighten my shirt. I never want to see the two of you here again, unless you're coming with an apology. You've made your decision, and now you have to live with it. I'm not going to be held responsible for either of your bad decisions anymore. My mom started crying and begging me, but I was done. They were both adults, and I'd done my dues for them over and over again. I'd actively tried to improve my brother's life and had paid thousands of dollars a month for my mom to have a comfortable life, and they repaid me by excluding me and then ambushing me and assaulting me. I told them I was through with them and that I would call the police if I ever saw one of them on my property again, either home or business. My mom stood there crying, but the mention of police scared Nick, and he started trying to drag my mom away. It's been a few weeks since then, and I haven't heard from my mom. I received a few notifications about the canceled payments and a threat of foreclosure. I'm expecting a similar threat for repossession of the car any day now. Nick came around to my house one day, holding up both his hands as a sign of peace. I decided not to call the police yet, and just hear him out. He looked better than the last time I'd seen him. He was sober, and it seemed like he was making more of an effort to take care of himself, though he looked tired and unhappy. He didn't beg for forgiveness or anything. He just said he was scared of our mom ending up homeless when the house was foreclosed. I told him that I wasn't going back on my position. To my surprise, he said he understood, and just asked for help getting her to a place to live when she was kicked out. I told him that I'd cover 6 months of rent for a small apartment for her, but after that, they were on their own. Part of me felt weak for offering even that much to help them, but I told myself that this was the last bit of help they'd be receiving from me and that it was being offered entirely on my terms. Maybe one day I'll get back in touch with my family if they manage to stand on their feet and learn to respect boundaries, because no matter what, there's always going to be a soft spot for family. But until then, I'll focus on my business knowing that I've done my best for them and they threw it in my face. It's hard to see someone you love react so negatively, but it's essential to remember that you're not responsible for her reactions or choices. By blocking her number and stopping the automatic payments, you've made it clear that you're not willing to tolerate disrespect anymore. Your decision to provide some financial support for a limited time shows that you're still willing to help, but you're doing it on your own terms, which is a healthy boundary. Focusing on your business and your own well-being is a fantastic choice. Stay strong and trust that you're on the right path, OP. Did you go into business with your family? How did it go? We want to hear your stories. Thank you for joining us today in the R Lounge. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time, and please put your chair back where you found it.